we welcome you into SportsZone All Access. Grant Sweeter, Ian Sachs here in on this Tuesday, October the 7th. Got to keep my days straight. A lot of things going on. I think what threw me off today is we've been doing all this football coverage. You got state golf and state tennis going on. We'll recap that in tomorrow's show. Playoff soccer begins today. And then on all of it, we were at basketball media today for the Summit League today, and that just threw me off, Ian, because it's still early October. The weather's slowly starting to change, but it just does not feel like basketball weather.
Well, Grant, think about it. Just 2-3 days ago, it was high 80s, and now we're talking about basketball. You think of that with negative 20 degrees outside. So, yeah, very different feel, but for someone who loves basketball,
I'm sure you're
there's
excited.
a little bit of an excitement in the air, but I love the warm weather too. So kind of combining basketball and warm weather, sign me up for that.
Yeah, I guess. And we were at Summit League Media Day today. We talked to both the men's and women's teams for both SDSU and USD. We had two players, and a coach from each one. That's 12 interviews that we recorded, and we will slowly start unveiling all of that content daily here on KELOLAND SportsZone All Access. That includes today when we start with Aaron Johnston, the SDSU head women's basketball coach. We'll have that interview coming up for you in just a little bit. But a lot of things happened in football. We saw a lot of ranked matchups. We saw some big upsets. We saw some number ones fall. And so, yeah, and plural, by the way. Yeah, let's dive right into it and start in the state's biggest class with 11 AAA. And we'll talk about the top game in a second. Yeah, we know it's the biggest game of maybe the whole weekend. Harrisburg defeats Roosevelt 45-0. The Tigers really starting to figure it out right now. They're a team that I think is very dangerous down the stretch. O'Gorman edges Pierre after Pierre was up 23-7. O'Gorman scores the final 20 points of the game, and wins 27-23. Jefferson blows out Rapid City Stevens on the road. But Harrisburg, we're going to learn what Harrisburg is made of. They lost to O'Gorman, have since snapped off 5 straight wins, but now they have at Jefferson, home against Brandon Valley, and at Lincoln. We're going to find out who the Tigers are this week, these next 3 weeks, Ian, and just how good that 5 straight wins has actually been.
Yeah, they still have arguably the 3 toughest opponents on their schedule outside of that O'Gorman game to open the season. But yeah, and that O'Gorman game was a tight one back all the way back in week 1. So it'll be really interesting to see. Still a lot up for grabs in 11 AAA, but talk about up for grabs. This game, the game of the week, Grant, you were there. Incredible game.
Oh,
Lincoln
insane.
Lincoln and Brandon Valley.
Yeah, well, it was incredible. And you know, there was way less scoring than we thought going into halftime when it was 10-7. And Jordan DeSmit, who was on the call with me, goes, I think both offenses are going to figure it out here. And they did. And they did so well in the second half. And Brandon Valley went up 2 scores, and Lincoln's offense, you can never count them out. They drive down the field, they score, they get a stop, they drive right down the field. It looks like they're going to win the game. They're first and goal. Well, it didn't go anywhere. It's 4th down and 2 from the 3. They never did get goal to go. They were 1 yard shy of that. 4th down and 2 at the 3. They've got to get 1 yard. There's the play right here. The snap was muffed. It never even got off the ground. It just rolled its way forward. Even if Lincoln had recovered it, it was 4th down, wouldn't have mattered anyway. He didn't. It was recovered by that guy, number 1 for Brandon Valley. And the Lynx win a thriller, and it was the game of the year by far. So good. And this guy right here, Ryder Mueller, give this guy credit. This is a sophomore running back, came in off the bench, replacing Levi Vescerno, one of the top running backs in the state, and their offense didn't lose a step. And he had 2 touchdowns in it. So insane game of the year, and giving some clarity to this as Brandon Valley now the resounding number 1 in the class, Ian.
Well, when it's the top 2 teams and the only loss among them is the one game that they played,
right,
it makes sense. Brandon Valley has done everything that they've been asked to do this year, and they're deserving of that number 1 spot. But remember last year, Brandon Valley rolled Lincoln in the regular season. The 2 meet in the Dome. Brandon Valley has a lead, and then Lincoln comes back and wins it in the second half. Sign me up for another one of these 2 sometime in November.
Yeah, if we could schedule it, just, I don't care which round. Just let's see it again, I mean, a lot of people say, in the championship, well, there's still a lot of big games to be played to say the championship. I mean, you talk about tough schedules. Lincoln still has Harrisburg on the schedule as well. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll certainly see. In 11 AA, Huron rolls. They're the new number 1 because the top line there, Sturgis upsets Yankton 27-21. Long road trip for Yankton, coming off an emotional big game against Sturgis. We'll talk about that in a second. We already mentioned the Pierce score. Brookings is blanked by T area. But yeah, new number 1 in the class, Ian, because Sturgis invites Yankton over, long trip over, and the Bucks struggling out there. It's first time their offense really held in check all season, falling 27-21.
Yeah, they've put up points in just about every single game so far this year. But how about the way that Sturgis was able to hold them and then the late touchdown score? I remember checking the score, and it was 21-21. Final couple of minutes of the fourth quarter, and I said, wow, this game's really coming down to it, and would have loved to be there. And then checked back a few minutes later, and I see, wow, Sturgis won 27-21. So a big shakeup in 11 AA, but it speaks to just how deep this class is, that you have now Sturgis, who's knocked off the previous number 1 team in Yankton. You have a Huron team that's looking really good. Here, you can never count out. And Tease, it seems like, is shutting everyone out. So their defense is so stout. This class is going to be a lot of fun to watch the rest of the way.
It could be interesting. This is a big play that you're going to see right here. Yankton's already up a score, going in for 2, right? Ball gets poked out as they're running across the goal line, and you see the ball trickle out the back of the end zone. That's a touchback. And so instead of Yankton going up 2 scores, now they're only up 1 score. And then right here, Sturgis answered. And so that was a huge momentum swing in this game. And they got some bounces to go their way. And Sturgis, the big W at home. In 11A, there were 2 ranked games. Sioux Falls Christian was not one of them. They're number 1, and they rolled Vermilion 48-7. Del Rapids West Central 21-20. Great game that happened over there. Madison and Tri-Valley. This was another ranked game. It actually is sent Tri-Valley out of the rankings. I think some of this, too, could have been a little frustration from Madison after the way they performed against Sioux Falls Christian the week before at home. And it was Madison saying, we're going to get back on track. But the game of the week in 11A was Del Rapids and West Central. And this is such a rivalry. They've played so many times in the playoffs. They've met in the state championship. They've kind of just been built as rivals because they're nearby each other and play each other all the time. 21-20, the final score. I mean, just a great game, between 2 really, really good teams in 11A.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Always fun when these 2 square off. And you think about for Del Rapids, now they have a 1-point ranked win and a 1-point ranked loss when they lost to Madison a couple weeks ago in our game of the week. So Del's is in a lot of tight games against the other top teams, and that just shows you how bunched up a lot of these top teams are in the class outside of Sioux Falls Christian. Sioux Falls Christian clearly number 1, but then it's, those 2, 3, 4 right there, so close and so much fun. It means that we're going to have a lot of fun playoff games to get to the Dome.
Well, and I'll say 2, 3, 4, 5. You got Madison, West Central, Del Rapids, Lenox, and then Tri-Valley. I mean, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 even. So, yeah, there's some talent there. Del Rapids, tough schedule. Canton this week, at Sioux Falls Christian the next week, home against Lenox the following week. So, yeah, they've got their hands full coming up here in the next few games. And in 11B, Elk Point Jefferson, statement win over Wagner. We'll talk about that in a second. St. Thomas More continues to roll. I think St. Thomas More maybe has the best resume of any number 2 ranked team in the state that can't be number 1. I mean, there's so many good teams in the state that if they're that good a resume, they'd be number 1. St. Thomas More can't get over that hump because of what Elk Point Jefferson's resume says. Woonsocket, Washington Springs, Sanborn Central, Blanks, Miller, Highmore, Herald, Mobridge, Pollock in a nail-biter over Lee Deadwood. But the game that we were most looking forward to, Ian, 1 versus 5 in the class, and Elk Point Jefferson, they have looked really good this year. There's been a lot of games that they've looked good. They beat Winter by 12, beat Mount Vernon Plankington by 18, but this to me was their most complete win, a 48-0 stomping of the 5th-ranked Wagner Red Raiders.
Well, Wagner, I believe just a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe was as high as number 2
they were,
in the class.
Yeah, they were 2 weeks ago.
And so I was really looking forward to seeing, well, okay, this is a team that dropped a little bit in the rankings, but thinking, okay, this team maybe could challenge Oak Point Jefferson. And the Huskies said, no, we are number 1 far and away in this class. And they just continue to roll. I feel like we say that every single week, that EPJ is just rolling. And they do that once again, a real almost put up a 50 burger against a ranked team.
Yeah, that's impressive. And Wagner, good football team. They started 5-0, lost the last 2 games. So certainly an impressive win by the Huskies. Well, that's enough about 11-man. We'll move to 9-man when we come back to Sports Zone All Access. Welcome back, Sports Zone All Access. We talked about 11-man. We've got our good interview coming up with Aaron Johnston here quick, so got to quickly move through 9-man here. So let's dive right into it with 9AA, the ranked games from last week. Freeman Marion, Freeman Academy. I feel like every week we're saying that Centerville's playing somebody tough, and they had to do it again, the best team in 9-man. 43-8, the Tornadoes fall victim there. Hamlin rolls DeSmit. Elkton Lake Benton rolls Garrettson. Phillip upsets Hill City in a thriller. Parkston blanks Platte Geddes, and it seems like, Ian, don't look now, but Parkston's won 5 in a row, and they've done so in convincing fashion now with a nice win over Platte Geddes.
Yeah, I love the storyline for this Parkston team. We had really high expectations in the preseason. They stumbled a little bit out of the gate, and now they have found it, and this is a dangerous team. If I'm any other team in 9AA, I do not want to see Parkston 1 down the stretch or even in the playoffs, too. I feel like this is a team that can certainly make a run once we turn the calendar to the playoffs.
Yeah, Woolsey, Wessington, and Gregory, the last 2 on their schedule, as they try to finish 7-1 after their first loss of the season in Game 1. Wall rolls Jones County. Warner rolls Redfield. Elcester Hudson was on a bye. Parkston, we already mentioned. And Howard blanks Hanson in that really close cross-class game there. But we're talking about a team that has just an impeccable resume. And, Jones County is down a little bit this year, but you've got to win the games that you have in front of you. And when you do it 50-0, you'll catch the attention of everybody in the state, too.
I almost feel like Wall's resume is very similar to Oak Point Jefferson in 11B, just a team that had really high expectations coming into this season and has looked every bit the part, just dominating everyone on their schedule.
Yeah, they've rolled so far, scoring 54 points, 56 points per game and allowing just 5. So that is a 51-point scoring margin. Yeah, they're playing very good football. And in 9B, you have Sully Buttes blanking Faith. Avon rolls Trip Delmont, Armor, AC/DC. Del Rapids St. Mary on a bye, but not for long. They get Elcester Hudson this week, and that'll be our game of the week. Faulkton area rolls North Central, and Harriet Selby area beats Gettysburg. But the game that we were at for 9B, Sioux Falls Lutheran, they're sneaking up there now, 5-2 on the year, Ian. They're trying to make a little bit of a push to try to be one of the top teams in 9B.
They're a team that's right around the rankings. Every week, I feel like they're in the receiving votes category, and I've even put them into my votes a couple of times, sneaking in on that back end of 9B. This is a team that also, I think, can make a little bit of a push in the playoffs, and why maybe not advance that far, but they can be a tough out for just about anyone in the class.
They could be. And outside of the Coleman-Egan game, I think they've played pretty true. They're 5-2 this year. That's a game I think they'd want back. I think Sioux Falls Lutheran is better than the way that they performed that night. And it cost them a loss that they probably shouldn't have on their schedule. The Avon loss was what it was. Avon is really, really good. So, well, that'll wrap up our high school football coverage for this. Coach Aaron Johnston talked with us at Summit League Media Day today. We'll talk with him when we come back to Sports Zone All Access. And welcome back to Sports Zone All Access here on this Tuesday as we finish up today's show. Summit League Media Day was today. We mentioned that already earlier in our show, and that we would bring you one of our several interviews that we had from Summit League Media Day. And it's only fitting to start with the team from South Dakota that reached the NCAA tournament, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. They reached the NCAA tournament, beat Oklahoma State, then fell to UConn, and we all know UConn went on to win the national championship. So it was quite the experience playing a team that would eventually be the national champions. We had a conversation with Coach Aaron Johnston at the Summit League Media Day, and here it is. Joining me now, SDSU women's head coach Aaron Johnston. And AJ, coming into a new season, few players that have graduated, including Paige Meyer, who just had such a great career. I don't know if you can replace her, but how do you try to fill the production that she gave?
You know, that whole senior class was really talented. Callie, Mesa, Maddie, and Paige obviously all brought a lot of things to each of their games. And that whole group has been really hard to not have as we start the year. But every year is like that. We always graduate some good ones. And Paige was a big part of what we did. We could do so much through her on offense and defense. I really thought she was one of the more dominant players in our conference all 4 years that she played. One of those players that you had to think about and account for if you were the other team, and for us, almost took for granted some of the things that she was able to do. So it's been a work in progress right now, trying to fill all of those roles from that senior group. But that's the fun challenge of every year, is how you replace great people. And we've had that challenge a lot, and we'll continue to try and do a good job with it.
And that's kind of where you guys have built your program, because you know, we've seen SDSU greats graduate, and then here comes a new one, or here comes someone that could be the next great. And that seems like kind of the way you guys have built the program.
Yeah, really, really lucky over the years to have so many talented people. We've had a lot of players that are, you know, some of the very best players in the Summit League. Some of them are some of the very best players in our area. And so that's what's made our program grow over the years, just having really talented people. So the fact that we're trying to replace, I mean, that's just a reality, but that attracts the next great player to come too. I want to be the next Brooklyn Meyer, Paige Meyer. I want to be the next, you know, Jen Warkentine years ago and down the road. So that's helped us a bunch, and it's a good challenge to try and tackle.
Looking back at last year too, I haven't got to talk to you since, but I mean, you guys unfortunately saw your season end, but to the eventual national champions, which is kind of unique. What was that whole kind of process like, you know, going to UConn where they worship women's basketball and then seeing them go on to win a national championship?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. We want to find ways to win those games and move forward. That's obviously the goal, but you want to have meaningful, lasting experiences when you make the NCAA tournament, and that was one. Our team that played in that game, both of those games, beating Oklahoma State and then playing against Connecticut, that'll be something that stays with them. It'll stay with their families that traveled with us out there and were able to experience it, and that's what you want. Now, again, you want to find ways to win those games, but to go play in a place that is that, you know, storied and that revered was a great experience, and one that'll stay with us.
Now on to this season. You lost one Meyer, but you return another one in Brooklyn Meyer, the preseason player of the year. What is it about her that she has just been able to build such a career through the last 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, she, like all of our great players, she just continues to get better. You know, if you remember where Brooklyn was as a freshman, you could see she was going to be really good, but she just kept getting better and better and better. And this year's no different. She's added parts to her game that she didn't have in the past. I think what makes Brooklyn so dominant is her ability to score, but also her ability to pass. She's an unbelievable passer and creates a ton of offense for us through the post position, let alone how she defends and rebounds. So there's just really not one part of her game that is flawed. She can do just about everything, and she's a great leader. She'll be a captain for us this year as well. So I think everybody's excited to see just how far Brooklyn can go with what she does as a basketball player.
And, you know, with the seniors you had last year, we maybe didn't get to see some of those players that were on the bench, but I've heard there's a few underclassmen that are really hungry to get a chance, and we could see some faces that have been on the bench here play for the Jackrabbits.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of them are local players. Some of them grew up here in Sioux Falls or in the South Dakota. We had some really good players last year that just didn't quite give any time, you know. So now I think that young group is going to have a chance to really earn their spot and help continue to move our program forward. But Emily Fox and Katie Vasek, who both played limited minutes last year, will have much bigger roles. You got Molly Abdouche coming off the bench. You got Claire Shepard coming off the bench. Jaden Dunn is now coming off of a red shirt. So you got people that can really do some good things for us. And it'll be fun to see how they grow with a freshman class that's really talented this year as well.
Well, and those names you mentioned were all kind of one class that you got from all South Dakota here a couple of years ago. It was a big five that came in. And so many people were excited for that, and now it sounds like maybe we'll get to see that big five get some valuable minutes.
I think so. I think the thought that they're all going to come, they're all going to play together, and it's a 5-person rotation is probably, a little unrealistic in college basketball. But absolutely, all 5 of them are going to contribute to what we do, both on and off the court, because they're great people. Those that grew up watching those 5 play know that they're fantastic leaders and role models. But they're going to do good things for us on the court, and as they continue to grow and get more experience, you're going to see a lot of them.
When you talk about contributing, we've seen some of your most important players start as contributors, like Mesa Byam. By the time she was a senior, she was a huge part of your guys' starting lineup, and that, it's that growth that you, again, have alluded to a couple times.
Yeah, really hard in college basketball just to step on the floor day one and be at your very best, especially at the competition level we play. We're playing against some of the best teams in the country. And it does take a little time sometimes to get used to it, but really proud of how we develop people. I'm really proud that those people stick and stay in a world where a lot of people bounce around. They deserve a lot of that credit for growing in our program and giving that time to happen. So it'll be fun to see this young group do the same, and really looking for big things from them.
How much, too, when you talk about players sticking with Brookings, how much do you accredit, the whole program, the community, the fans, all of that, to help keep people, the tradition, helping keep people in Brookings?
Yeah, I think our program has always recruited that way. We've recruited with the mindset that we want this to be a 4 or 5 year experience. We don't want this to be transactional. Let's see how it goes for a year. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for us, and we can move on. We just haven't really approached it that way. I think everybody feels like they're valued, respected, like there's a plan for them moving forward, and we'll continue to try and build our program that way.
Last one, you guys were picked as the preseason favorites in the Summit League. From your perspective, what's the Summit League going to look like this season?
Well, a lot of new faces, whether they be coaching staffs maybe in year 1 or even year 2. A lot of new rosters where there's just great turnover. Certainly, I think North Dakota State has a really stable group coming back. They're going to be really talented, one of the more talented and deeper teams in our league for sure. When you look outside of maybe South Dakota State, North Dakota State, that's where you have a lot of new faces to our league, both in rosters and staffs. So we'll have to see how all that plays out. But really, you've got 2 teams that return a lot, and I think we'll be in the hunt at the end.
Perfect. Thanks, AJ.
Okay, thanks.
And that was Coach Aaron Johnston, who we had a great conversation with. He was one of 12 interviews that we conducted with players and coaches out at the Sanford, at the Premier Center, at the Denny Sanford Premier Center, where Summit League Media Day was held on Tuesday. And so that's one of 12 interviews that we're going to run. So plenty of sound leading up to the basketball season, which isn't too far away. And so we'll have coverage of that tonight. We'll have a little bit of sound and conversation from that. We'll also have highlights from the state golf tournament and tennis tournaments as well. Well, that'll wrap up our coverage today here on SportsZone All Access. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on Wednesday.